Hey everybody, welcome back to week 3 of Family Matters. We've gone through 2 weeks already, and if you're new, or you haven't been there last week, the week before, or if you just don't have a photographic memory, we said a few things, and they look like this. 1, when it comes to family, love matters most. Not our space, not our argument, not being right, none of those things. In our family, love matters most. And when love matters most, what it will do is just about anything for our family. And that's modeled to us through Jesus. And then week 2, we said this. Your family matters to God even when it's fractured. We looked at the story of Jacob and Esau, 2 brothers who, a lot like us, probably had some contentious, competitive moments. But God wasn't done with their family even when they went through horrible situations and they treated each other just as bad. God does not give up on us, so we can't count ourselves or our family out. In week 3, we want to start right here with this statement. There are things we wish we could change, especially right now in our lives. There's probably a lot of things that you wish you could change. If you could snap your fingers or rub a lamp or ask somebody in power to change some things in our life. Now, this becomes especially true when we talk about our families. We wish we could change some things in our families. I'm sure there are some things about your family you wish you could change because I know I do. We've all got things in our family that maybe we're just embarrassed is still true, things that we can't stop doing, or things we never wished had started. There's things about our family we wish we could change. In fact, you may have even tried to change some of these things in your family yourself. You may not be the dad or the mom, but you still have some sort of influence and you have tried to work your will in your family. In fact, you may have tried to change things in your family because ironically, your family has changed. I know mine has. Here's some of a few ways that my family has changed over the years. More siblings. When I was born, it was just me and my older sister, and then very quickly, more siblings got added. We moved a number of times. That changed dynamics in our family. Jobs. My parents got different jobs over the years, like yours I'm sure has. Driving. My sister learned how to drive, which changed some things. I learned how to drive, which changed some things, and so on. College. My sister went off to college, then I went off to college. Things changed as we had more siblings and we all started driving, the dynamics become multiplied. Moved out. We're all moved out of the house. And that changed some things about our family. And then married. As we started walking into the next phase of life, a few of us have gotten married, and that has changed our family and our dynamic. Now for you, these things might be true, but other things might be true too. It might not just be the roles or the physical stuff that's changed. It might be some other things like this. Maybe you moved to a different area. You didn't just move homes in the area, you've moved to a completely new area. This might be your first year where you live right now. Maybe some people in your family moved out, or maybe they moved in, and that's changed your family. Maybe the money situation in your family has changed. Maybe your family has more money than it's ever had before, and that's changed things. Maybe you've never had less money than your family has right now, and that's changed some things. Maybe the health in your family has swung dramatically from healthy to sick. Or maybe at one time, somebody in your family was really sick and now they're healthy. Maybe the roles. Maybe the person you called mom and the one who fills that role right now has changed. And those changes in your family change how you interact with them. And that's a big deal. And despite our best efforts to keep our family from changing or changing our family the way we wish we could change them, there's 2 things that you and I both know about change, and it's this. 1, change is inevitable. The only thing that's constant in life is change. That statement's funny because it means that things are going to constantly change, and despite our best efforts, it's not going to stop. And 2, change is necessary. It doesn't always feel like that, but that is the case. Change is inevitable, and change is necessary. What I love about the Bible is that the people in the Bible had the same experiences, emotions, and just like us, families. And one of the guys who wrote in the Bible actually had extraordinary insight about life. If he were alive today, you'd see him at TED Talks. He'd probably have a YouTube or Instagram page with millions of followers because of that insight. And he says things about our world that help us going forward. One of the things he talked about was change. And he noted this about change in our lives. Ecclesiastes 3 says it like this: there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, meaning here on earth. And here's a few examples: a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build. Now, you could really start walking through all of these things, but he doesn't finish there. He continues and says this, a lot more. Time to weep and laugh, mourn and dance, scatter stones and gather them, embrace and refrain from embracing, search, give up, keep, throw away, tear, mend, silent, speak, love, hate, war, and peace. That is a lot of activities under the sun. But times change, and things change, and the way we interact with them changes too. And how those things interact with our family is exactly what we want to talk about this week. Your family is going to change, which means you're going to change, and how we react to it is pivotal. It's our role in our family. And what I want to do is share with you a culture and a family situation that may just make you very thankful for the family that you have right now. And it's all recorded in the book of Titus in the New Testament. Now here's what happened. Paul actually sent Titus to this island called Crete, and he wrote a letter to him to talk to the people who were followers of Jesus on that island. And he said, Titus, you got to go there and share this message with them. Now we know that letter as the book called Titus in the Bible. And he writes to them about their family in chapter 2. And this is so important because the people that actually made up the island of Crete. Crete was founded and built by mercenaries. They would get paid to go kill people or join in on battles. And so when they settled this island and became these people, one of the core values of that island was treachery, was violence. In fact, one of the nicknames they had for the people of Crete was based off of the name Crete, and they were called liars. That was the nickname for the people of the island. And so if you're a follower of Jesus on the island of Crete and you've got those values inside you, that's a problem because they're in direct conflict with who Jesus is and what Jesus tells us to do. So Paul sends Titus to that very dangerous atmosphere and says, you got to tell them about Jesus, and here's what you're going to tell them. Now, what he wrote down, the letter that he gave Titus, we know as the book of Titus in the New Testament. And he tells Titus these very things. As for you, Titus, promote the kind of living that reflects wholesome teaching. Teach the older men to exercise self-control, to be worthy of respect, and to live wisely. They must have faith and be filled with love and patience. Now, if you're on an island of mercenaries, this is kind of like a death sentence. Mercenaries aren't going to be self-controlled, respectful, wise, faithful, loving, or patient people. But it's not the point to stay alive as long as you can. No, Paul's trying to show them the way forward. And he shares not just with the old men, but with the old women too. He said, similarly, teach the older women to live in a way that honors God. They must not slander others or be heavy drinkers. Instead, they should teach others what is good. And this is the emphasis Paul gives for families and the dynamic created in the culture they live in. You are not just being good for yourself. You're not just being good because Jesus called you to be good, but you're being good because you're going to teach others what is good. And he emphasizes the men like he emphasizes the women so that they can do this one thing. These older women must train the younger women to love their husbands and their children, to live wisely and be pure, to work in their homes and do good, to be submissive to their husbands. Then they will not bring shame on the word of God. When they were alive, when they were calling themselves follower of Jesus and walking around and then doing the exact opposite of these things, it brought shame to the word of God because people would see if you're a follower of God and doing the exact opposite of these things, what kind of a follower are you really? Here's the point of what Paul is telling Titus and telling these people is, the point of doing these things is because the people below you and the people around you are watching. In fact, let me ask this question. What would your neighbors say about God from watching your family? If people were watching your family, what would they say about God? Paul's appealing to Titus to tell the people of Crete this very thing. If you're a follower of Jesus and people are watching you, what would they assume about God? Now, if this question makes you nervous, or if you're sitting here thinking, I don't know if I can answer that one really well, then maybe it's time for a change. And Paul summarizes the value system needed to make that change. And he pulls it all together at the end of this thought down in verse 14. He says this, he gave his life, Jesus, he gave his life to free us from every kind of sin, to cleanse us and to make us his very own people, totally committed to doing good deeds. The driving motivation, the value system underneath why we do things starts with the fact that Jesus sacrificed for us. God's abundant grace, giving us Jesus, is the underlying pull for why we act differently, for why you and I change, and why we need to change in our families. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, I wish my family could hear this. In fact, I wish this message was for my family, but that's kind of exactly Paul's point. It doesn't start with them. It starts with you and I. In fact, you and I, if we know things need to change, we see our family changing, and we want to help because we know things need to, then it starts with you and I. We don't turn around and look at everybody else and say, they need to change and they need to change. We need to change. Our hearts and our minds are the first things that need to change if our family is going to change in a godly, positive way. In fact, I'd put it like this. When your family changes, your mindset matters. Maybe there's somebody new in the house that hasn't been there before. Maybe somebody who used to be in the house isn't there anymore. Maybe the very people that are still in the house from the very beginning are different people from their hearts, attitudes, and mind. Well, you, in that family, in that role, need to consider your mindset first, because that's the thing that matters the most. We talked about this last week when we said love matters most. It's our frame of reference, it's our value system, it's our highest priority. It's to show love, yes, and think about where we're beginning. What is our mindset? Now, this may be a different strategy than you've used in the past. You may have used things like controlling, yelling, lying, manipulating, hiding, or isolating to change yourself or your family. But Jesus actually calls us to something better. He looks at you and I and he says there's a higher, better way to do this. Now, like the followers of Jesus on Crete, we could allow culture and the people around us to influence our family and change who we are. Or we can allow Jesus to be the highest influence in our lives and tell us, I have a better way forward for your family, and it starts with you looking at your heart and your mind and my example of sacrifice for you and giving that to your family. In fact, if we allow Jesus to change us, we may be the agent of change our family so desperately needs.